Welcome back to another video. Now, unfortunately, the human body is not perfect and it does have problems where diseases are formed. This may happen at the cellular level or higher. And today we're going to be talking about nervous system disorders. So disorders that affect our nerves and the conduction of nerve signals along the axons to each neuron. So let's get into it. The first one we're going to be going over is multiple sclerosis, or it is commonly abbreviated as MS. And MS is when the myelin sheath that goes down the length of the axon starts to disintegrate. It starts to become damaged. And these damages mess up the nerve propagation, the nerve impulse from one neuron to the other. And this causes symptoms like blindness, paralysis, loss of memory, and just other sensory loss associated with these neurons. And to look at this diagram over here, we see that on the left here, we have a normal neuron and our myelin sheaths are all intact and normal. But on the right here, we have damaged myelin sheaths, and this exposed parts of the sheaths that is damaged causes the nerve, as we said, the nerve propagation to be slower and even cause physical symptoms and pain. So that is multiple sclerosis. And then we move over to Parkinson's disease. Now, in people with Parkinson's disease, this is more of a problem with the balance of the neurotransmitter dopamine in their brain. And when they have a drop in dopamine levels, what happens is this affects their movement and results in paralysis. Now, there is no treatment for Parkinson's at the moment, but there are certain medications to help alleviate some of the symptoms. And some of these symptoms may include a gait where they walk like their feet are shuffling along, they really can't walk well. Their body structure itself is more crunched together. They're very rigid, and just overall instability for the person. This is all due to the decrease in dopamine levels. So that is a general overview of Parkinson's, and that's what someone who has Parkinson's disease may look like if the disease progresses enough. And then we're going to move over to our epilepsy. Now, epilepsy is basically seizures and abnormal behavior a person may experience. And this could be a result of head trauma that the person experienced, and it can manifest at any age. And just some general symptoms of epilepsy is loss of consciousness, anxiety, staring into just oblivion, pretty much that you can't figure out what they're staring at, and just overall weakness in their body. So that is epilepsy. Seizures, the person's kind of disoriented when it happens, they lose consciousness maybe, and they may be anxious before the seizure actually occurs. Now we're going to move over to Alzheimer's. Now I'm sure a lot of you know what Alzheimer's is. You may have a relative that's affected by it. But in Alzheimer's, basically the brain cells start to degenerate and the muscle itself, the brain, starts to atrophy. And when the brain atrophies, it gets smaller and it starts to lose several functions. And some of these symptoms and loss of functions include memory loss, changes in mood, struggling to communicate with others, just a general confusion and forgetfulness the person may experience. And unfortunately, there is no cure for Alzheimer's at the moment, but there are certain, mental stimulation exercises, medications that may alleviate for at least some time for that person, so they may feel a bit more normal. And then we're going to move on to amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or ALS. Now, you may be familiar with ALS from prominent figures who have it, such as Lou Gehrig was one of the first major people to have it, or Stephen Hawking. And what ALS is basically a muscle is unable to contract or flex, and this is because of the degradation of the neuron itself. And because a neuron can't stimulate the muscle to contract, the muscle basically becomes smaller and smaller to the point where it's so weak you can't use it. And to go over some symptoms of ALS, it's what you expect because you can't contract your muscles normally. And this is like difficulty walking, tripping and falling, and progresses all the way to where you become basically confined to a wheelchair and can't even speak because you can't use your muscles normally because the neuron's not functioning right. So ALS is a very debilitating disease, obviously, and unfortunately there is no cure for this one either. But hopefully there will be in the coming years. And now let's move on to the last disease we're going to talk about today, and that is Huntington's disease. Now, Huntington's disease is actually a genetic disease and can be inherited from your parents. And with people with Huntington's disease, basically, it degenerates certain brain cells in certain areas of the brain that are responsible for movement and thinking. And this obviously can be very impactful to the person because they're not going to be able to function like a normal human being, unfortunately. And here's a little diagram I have for you. Over here we have a normal brain section. You can see it's nice and full. The brain cells are all there. But then we go over here and you can see these massive holes in the person's brain because the cells start to degenerate and just die off. And unfortunately, this impacts, like we said, their speaking, their movement. And it is unfortunate that it is in fact a genetic disease because it's something the parents must consider before having children of their own if they want to take the risk of the children getting that disease as well. It's an unfortunate reality some people face, and the best we could do is support them through the difficult times. So that will conclude the diseases we're going to talk about for the nervous system. And yes, like I said before, a lot of them don't have any cures for them, but we do have ways to alleviate the symptoms for a little bit, so that's something. But overall, they are not very nice diseases like any disease. So let's just help those people out who may have the diseases and learn about them and be supportive to them. Anyways, I hope you learned something in this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.